going to be a very, very sad state of affairs. And it's not just us going around the province talking to people. It's not just us living in communities, seeing what happens. We've seen forest professionals talk about it. We've seen Auditor Generals talk about it. We've heard time and time again that forest health is in terrible, terrible condition. If this government really cared about, if it cared about the economy, if it cared about the environment, if it cared about the future, it keeps talking about, oh, taxpayers' money being used for this, and we don't want to mortgage for our kids, and we don't want them to be paying debts forever. If they really cared about the future, Madam Speaker, they wouldn't be talking about that. They would be investing in forest health. They would be making sure that there was a land base, a healthy land base, that there would be something there for the future, Madam Speaker. Instead, we get what my colleague from the Cowichan Valley describes as a Band-Aid bill. A time when we could be talking about things which are with much more value, we get a hodgepodge, a few amendments. And Madam Speaker, I think it's very sad. And we've got not much problem with some of the amendments. We are going to, in committee stage, again, it won't be a debate. Committee stage is a discussion. Committee stage is when we on this side of the House get to ask the Minister, and the Minister refers to his staff and then tells us the answers. Unfortunately, we have a very restricted committee stage here in BC. We don't have, like other jurisdictions, where we can bring in experts, have a broader discussion. But we will be asking the Minister specific questions. And Madam Speaker, I think it's going to be a very interesting committee stage, because it is really a very, what is in this bill is, they say there's some innocuous parts, but there are some parts that are quite concerning. And I hope that we do get some answers, because, Madam Speaker, I'll be honest, I'm no expert, but I can read, and I can understand what I read, and I will very hopefully be able to ask the Minister, and maybe my colleagues will also be asking the Minister, what it actually means that when they are changing the Forest Act to ensure that applicants and holders of agreements are required to submit information to the government, must ensure that the information is complete and accurate. Well, Madam Speaker, this is about financing. This is about how much, this is about stumpage. This is about how much companies pay for the use of the resource. And only now, Madam Speaker, are they being told, are we having it written in legislation that it must ensure that the information is complete and accurate? Surely, Madam Speaker, these are things that we would be expecting companies who are self-reporting, Madam Speaker. Maybe this is one of the problems. These companies are self-reporting. And they are only now being told that what they do has to be complete and accurate. I would have thought that this is something that those companies should be obliged to do from the very start. I mean, the Liberal government brought in a results-based forest code. And I think the very fact that we're now having to demand from companies that what they say is complete and accurate underlines the failure, the abject failure of this, Madam Speaker. And this is just one small section. I mean, this is revenue. Revenue is important. We hear again and again, taxpayers, what are taxpayers going to say? This is revenue. It is revenue from a public resource. It's a way that we pay for our public services, not taxpayers' money from a public resource, publicly owned land, public trees, pays for public services. But the companies have clearly been allowed to get away with not giving the full information, not giving the full assessment, and not paying up the full amount of money. So, Madam Speaker, I'm hoping that when we get to the discussion on this, the committee stage, when we will be asking the Minister and his staff for full details, we can find out how much money we as a province might have lost in this effective raping of our land base, in the rapid liquidation of our resource, so we can fuel the export economy. How much money are we losing by a forest policy that has clearly has clearly failed. I think it really is extremely troubling, Madam Speaker, and I know that the Minister is obviously aware that we need to keep revenues, government revenues, healthy. We've got to pay for our social services. We have to pay for our healthcare. We've got to pay. I was sitting not long ago, listening into the debate on the Minister of Environment's budget debate. We've got to be paying for our parks. This is where it comes from. It comes from, part of it's not just what we as individuals or we as corporations or we as families pay in our taxes. It's how we raise our revenues from public resources. And this government clearly hasn't actually been doing very well on that, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I also am aware that in this Act, say it's, whether it's a Band-Aid or whatever it is, sad reflection, that there will be changes to the resource roads and how the resource roads work, the liability on resource roads, access, which is very important, Madam Speaker. And again, I'm looking for some clarity here because in my constituency, and I will speak very closely on my constituency, we have a lot of resource roads, a lot of logging roads where we share the roads with industry. Or where industry is no longer working, but still those roads access communities. Or where you have a mix, where sometimes the road, we still have some industry or some communities there which are forest-based communities. I know that we really do need to ensure that we are providing access, that people do continue to have access, that those roads are maintained. I'll cite a couple that are pretty highly used. One is the road to Zeballos and then on to Fair Harbour. It's a Forest Service road. It has industry, is being used by industry. It is used by communities. There are communities out in Zeballos. There are First Nations communities both in Zeballos and on the road to Fair Harbour. You get to Fair Harbour and that's the access to Cayucot. This is a road that it's very important that we find ways of ensuring that road is not just maintained, it's not just kept open, but is maintained and improved because those communities, the First Nations communities, are growing. Zeballos is trying to attract people, it's trying to build up an economy, it's looking at ways of bringing in, whether it's through the new sardine fishery, whether it's through ice works there, it's trying to create an economy. We have kids who use it to get to sporting events out in Port McNeill or in Port Hardy or going down to Campbell River. It's an active road. Likewise, the road out from Holberg to Port Hardy, again, it's serving a community. And then although there the school has unfortunately closed, again, I think a sign of the failure of this government's forestry policy because Holberg used to be a very active forestry centre and now people have been leaving it at a very sad and very rapid rate. But that road, it both serves the community of Holberg and then beyond that, a lot of places where tourists go, Cape Scott Provincial Park, Raft Cove, Sanjo Bay. These are all areas where we see a lot of tourist activity. And again, without the commitment to ensuring roads are maintained, that people are not going to be putting themselves at risk by accessing these provincial parks. So there has